Dexter's Laboratory is one of Cartoon Network's most iconic classics. Created by Genndy Tartakovsky and first airing in 1996, it gave us childhood afternoons filled with crazy inventions, flying robots, and a kid genius trying to protect his secret lab from the ultimate chaos machine, his sister Dee Dee. On the surface, it is a loud, funny sci-fi show about a brilliant boy pushing science to the limit, but some fans believe there is something deeper hiding behind all the jokes and explosions. Maybe Dexter is not just chasing the future, maybe he is trying to fix something in his past. A popular fan theory says Dexter once caused a huge accident in his lab. Something went wrong, an explosion happened, and he lost the people he loved most. Broken by guilt, he didn't just cry, he rebuilt. His parents, Dee Dee, his whole life, recreated through science. Their weird invincibility, their clumsy behavior, and how everything resets after disasters. Maybe it's not cartoon logic. Maybe it's a kid trying to restore a world he already lost. Every boom and meltdown could be a reminder of the mistake he can never undo. So grab your goggles. Let's step into Dexter's secret lab and uncover what might really be going on. On Dexter's first day of school in the new year, everyone welcomes him back because he is known as the smartest student. However, a new boy named Mandark joins the class, and he quickly proves he is even smarter than Dexter. The teachers start praising Mandark, and Dexter feels shocked and upset. After school, Dexter cries because he thinks he finally met someone who is better than him. Then Mandark visits him and says he heard that Dexter has a secret lab. Dexter proudly shows him the lab, thinking Mandark does not have one. But Mandark calmly shows his own lab, which is much bigger and more advanced. Dexter feels defeated, and Mandark tells him he must either work for him or shut down his own lab forever. Dexter sadly chooses to shut his lab and stop doing experiments. The next day at school, everyone ignores Dexter and celebrates Mandark instead. Dexter feels miserable. Dee Dee happily runs up and shouts, "Hi, Dexter," which makes Mandark fall in love with her. He asks Dexter for help so he can take Dee Dee on a date. At first, Dexter refuses, but then he realizes Dee Dee can destroy Mandark's lab by accident. He sets a candy trail for her, and she follows it to Mandark's lab. While dancing, she breaks everything. Dexter watches and celebrates as he turns his own lab back on and returns to his experiments. On Saturday night, Dexter and his family get ready to watch a movie called Santa Claus vs. the Wolfman. Dexter rushes in, excited to watch with them, but Mom tells him he is too young to stay up late. Sad and disappointed, Dexter goes to his room. The next Saturday, he tries again and begs Mom to let him watch, but she still refuses, and Dad does not help either. On the third Saturday, Dexter tries sneaking in, but Mom catches him and sends him to bed again. As he climbs the stairs, he watches his family laughing together, which makes him feel left out and gives him an idea. On the fourth Saturday morning, Dexter goes to his lab and decides to use his hydrocosmetic accelerator to turn himself into a grown-up so he can finally stay up late. However, Dee Dee wanders into the lab and presses a button right before he uses the machine. Instead of becoming 21 years old, Dexter walks out looking like a very old man. Mom calls them for lunch, and while everyone eats steak, Dexter can only eat applesauce. Dee Dee even puts it into an IV for him. Later that night, the family runs to the living room for the movie and pushes Dexter over. When the popcorn bowl reaches him, he has already fallen asleep. Dee Dee cries, thinking he died, but Mom explains he is simply too old to stay awake. In Dee Dee's room, she and her friends Lily and Mimi are practicing ballet. After finishing, they decide to visit Dexter. Meanwhile, in his lab, Dexter is proudly admiring all his inventions and enjoying the piece, but it ends when he sees the three girls standing at the entrance. He quickly tells them to leave, yet they return again right after. Dexter tries to focus on his work, but the girls keep causing chaos. Soon, he sees them playing with the X-ray machine, which makes him panic. Then Mimi wipes away Dexter's entire science equation from his blackboard and draws a cute little cat instead. Dee Dee grabs the DX-21 and starts chasing Dexter around the lab, forcing him to run for his life, while Lily opens the cages and releases all the lab animals. Frustrated, Dexter rushes to the clone-o-matic and creates a bunch of copies of himself to fight back. He sends his clones after Lily and Mimi while he personally chases Dee Dee. Lily starts pushing random buttons on a computer, and the first Dexter clone tries to stop her but gets zapped by a laser. Mimi plays with chemicals on a counter, and the second clone runs toward her, but the beakers fall on his head and explode. Dexter finally spots Dee Dee at the Atom Smasher, stepping in and out as it powers up, ready to cause even more disaster. Dexter quickly stops the Atom Smasher, but when Dee Dee jumps away, he gets flattened by the machine. Once he recovers, he sees the girls and several of his clones entering the clone-o-matic. To his horror, the machine begins producing clones of Dee Dee, Lily, and Mimi. He relaxes for a moment when more Dexter clones also appear, but then even more girl clones show up, turning his lab into total chaos again. To take control, Dexter calls a serious meeting with all his clones. He orders them to stop every single girl clone. Meanwhile, Dee Dee keeps using the clone-o-matic to make even more copies of her friends, pushing the machine beyond its limit. Suddenly, everything goes quiet, and Dee Dee charges straight toward Dexter in a big clone rover. Girl clones pour out of it, and the madness continues everywhere in the lab. Desperate, Dexter shouts for everyone to stop. All the clones turn to him, and he nervously freezes. Dee Dee suggests they all have a slumber party, and surprisingly, the clones agree. At that moment, Mom calls everyone for lunch, and every clone rushes upstairs to eat. Dexter finally feels safe again, thinking the chaos is over. But then a strange creature steps out of the clone-o-matic, and right after, a confused rabbit appears, asking where the girls went. Dexter sighs in frustration, realizing his cloning skills still need a lot of improvement. In Dexter's lab, he discovers a fossil in amber and decides to bring a dinosaur back to life. He prepares everything carefully, but soon realizes the DNA is missing two important parts, the heart and the brain. Dexter panics, thinking his whole plan is ruined. While he cries, a dog wanders into the lab, and this suddenly gives him an idea. He quickly takes the dog's heart and brain information and uses it to complete the dinosaur's DNA. When the cloning machine finishes, a huge T-Rex appears. It breaks out using its tail, and Dexter runs away screaming, but the dinosaur scoops him up gently with its tongue instead of eating him. Confused, Dexter starts wondering how the experiment ended up this way. He checks his log, but the T-Rex eats it. Then the dinosaur walks toward a machine in the lab, but Dexter stops it before it can mess anything up. Meanwhile, in Dee Dee's room, she plays with a toy dog and a fire hydrant. When she hears barking coming from the lab, she thinks it is a real dog and runs downstairs. Dexter has already locked the T-Rex inside a big cage, but Dee Dee arrives and opens it because she thinks it is cute. She happily takes the dinosaur outside for a walk around the neighborhood. When Dexter returns with a device to fix the DNA mistake, he finds the cage empty and panics again. Dexter races around his lab in a panic, trying to find the missing T-Rex until he spots one of Dee Dee's hairs and realizes she took it. At the park, Dee Dee happily plays fetch with the dinosaur, treating it like a dog. Dexter arrives flying a fighter jet that transforms into a bike, and he scolds Dee Dee for letting the creature loose in the city. Before he can finish, the T-Rex grabs him and buries him in the ground like a bone. Determined to catch it, Dexter calls his dinocopter and starts chasing the dinosaur. The T-Rex easily avoids every trap. It dodges a rocket net, rolls away from the freeze ray, and ducks under a leash device, causing Dexter to slam into a passing truck and crash his copter into a tunnel. Back at the park, Dee Dee keeps playing with the dinosaur while Dexter returns dressed as a cat, hoping to lure it. The T-Rex chases him all the way home, where Dexter climbs a tree to escape. The dinosaur simply rips the tree out of the ground and shakes it until Dexter falls out of his costume. Dexter and Dee Dee start arguing, but Mom interrupts and calls them for dinner. She sees the T-Rex and, thinking it is just a very big dog, tells Dee Dee she can keep it as long as she feeds it. During dinner, Dee Dee tosses her food to the dinosaur like it's a pet, while Dexter sits in frustration knowing this strange dog is here to stay. At night, Dexter works in his lab trying to crack a DNA code, but before bed, his computer reminds him that he did not study for his French test. Worried, Dexter asks for the subconscious discographic hypnotator and puts it on his head as he leaves the lab. He grabs an old French record, puts it in the player, and falls asleep to the lesson. However, the record skips and repeats only one phrase over and over, omelette du fromage. The next morning, Dexter goes to the kitchen for breakfast. Dee Dee teases him as usual, and when Dexter tries to answer her, he can only say, omelette du fromage. Dee Dee quickly realizes it is the only thing he can say and begins mocking him. Later at school, Dexter sits for his French test. The teacher announces that the whole exam has been reduced to one question. Dexter answers omelette du fromage, and surprisingly passes. In math class, he gives the same answer, and the teacher also accepts it. shocking Dexter. On the playground, Dee Dee teases him again, but when Dexter says, "Omelette du fromage," two girls suddenly become impressed. More girls gather around him, thinking it sounds charming, and Dexter turns popular fast. Even bullies misunderstand him and back away. Soon he becomes a school star, but his success ends when he tries to enter his lab. The lab asks for a password, and since Dexter can only say, "Omelette du fromage," he cannot get in. The system starts a meltdown, and Dee Dee appears one more time, laughing as Dexter helplessly repeats his only phrase. In Dexter's lab, he works on an invention while Dee Dee dances around behind him, making a mess. When she accidentally snaps a green bar, Dexter loses his temper and calls her stupid. Hurt, Dee Dee tells him he hides in his lab and never enjoys life, unlike her carefree style. She leaves, saying she won't bother him anymore. Dexter soon realizes she is right, so he runs after her and asks her to teach him the way of the Dee Dee. She agrees, ready to help him loosen up. Later, Dexter goes to the backyard without his lab coat or gloves, following Dee Dee's guidance. First, she has him appreciate a buttercup. Then, he pretends to be animals, like a triceratops. Next, Dexter balances on a rock using one hand as a mental exercise. After that, he runs across the yard carrying Dee Dee inside a backpack, trying to embrace her playful world. For the final test, they return to his lab. Dexter starts dancing gracefully, but then he becomes wild and chaotic, crashing into his equipment and breaking everything. Dee Dee becomes scared and slaps him to snap him out of it. Realizing she pushed him too far, she cries and runs out. Dexter looks at the damage, quietly puts his gloves back on, and starts fixing a bolt, returning to his true self. In Dexter's lab, he watches a monkey documentary trying to understand behavior. Meanwhile, Dee Dee, Lily, and Mimi are having a slumber party in her room. Curious about how girls act, Dexter asks Computer to research girl, then dresses in a black bodysuit and disguises himself as a stack of stuffed animals to spy on them. In Dee Dee's room, he quietly watches as the girls listen to music, pick spots for their sleeping bags, and have a pillow fight while laughing. Later, they put on nail polish and perfume. When Lily sprays perfume, the scent reaches Dexter and the girls realize someone is watching. They uncover Dexter's disguise and he tries to run, only to crash into a wall. Dee Dee then offers a cupcake from her Queasy Bake oven to lure him out. Dexter crawls toward it, eats it, and gets caught. The girls start asking him silly questions from 11 magazine, and when Dexter says his favorite animal is girl, they tease him. Then they decide to give him a makeover. They dress him in different outfits, put him in a dress, spin him in a chair, and paint his nails and face. Dee Dee shows him the result in a mirror, and Dexter panics and runs away screaming. Mimi calls Dexter weird. Lily shyly says she thinks he's cute, and Dee Dee and Mimi start teasing her by singing "Kissing," leaving Lily annoyed. Mandark dreams of Dexter ordering Dee Dee to destroy his lab while Dexter laughs. He wakes up crying at 4:30 a.m. and decides he must get revenge. Later at Huber Elementary, Mr. Lazinski tells the class about the upcoming science fair and encourages everyone to start working. Dexter proudly steps up, saying he plans to push science forward and win again. The students cheer for him, but Mandark interrupts. He reminds everyone that Dexter once used Dee Dee to destroy his lab and then challenges Dexter to a duel of the minds. Dexter brushes him off and acts like it is no big deal. Back in Dexter's lab, he lies on a flatbed under a tanning light, relaxing instead of preparing. Dee Dee walks in and mentions that Mandark challenged him. Dexter stays confident, saying he will just reuse some old inventions and still win easily. He tells Dee Dee to leave so he can keep working on his perfect look for the science fair. Dexter believes he has nothing to worry about, but Mandark is fueled by anger and planning to beat him. While Dexter focuses more on appearance than science, Mandark prepares seriously, hoping to finally defeat his rival. Mandark searches through the ruins of his destroyed lab, digging through books until he finds one titled The Magic of Science, written by him and JoJo. With a plan in mind, he prepares for the science fair. When the big day arrives, Dexter proudly shows off his project, an old invention that uses a robotic arm to crack an egg and throw the shell away neatly. The crowd is impressed, and Dexter is just about to receive first prize when Mandark bursts in, blowing an air horn to grab everyone's attention. Mandark then unveils his project, JoJo, a massive green blob creature with 4 eyes. JoJo growls loudly, terrifying everyone, and suddenly grabs Dee Dee, trying to eat her. Realizing how serious things have gotten, Dexter and Mandark decide to join forces to save her. Dexter uses his robotic arm to grab Dee Dee by the foot and pull her away from danger, while Mandark chants and uses magic to make JoJo disappear before the monster can chomp down. Once Dee Dee is safe, the robotic arm gently sets her down. She gives Dexter a quick kiss as thanks, then dodges Mandark when he tries to get one too. The judge, shocked but impressed, awards both boys the first place ribbon. Dexter and Mandark immediately start tugging at it, each wanting full credit while the audience watches, amused and relieved that the chaos is finally over. Dee Dee is dancing in her room until her watch tells her it is time to play with Dexter, so she happily runs to his room and copies his voice to enter the lab. Inside, Dexter is busy working on a new invention, but Dee Dee suddenly appears behind him and yells in his ear, which annoys him. She keeps repeating everything he says, and even though he tells her to leave, she walks the wrong way and finds something interesting. Dexter realizes she is missing and rushes to find her wearing the hydroplasmatic inflation suit. He tries to convince her to take it off, but when he mentions the dial, she turns it and the suit begins to inflate, lifting her into the air while Dexter tries to grab her. Dee Dee floats around the lab, teasing Dexter as she rises higher and even makes his hair stand up from static. Dexter gets frustrated and decides to use his chamber of aeronautics to bring her down. He fires a missile, but it misses and sends him through the ceiling. Then he uses a helipack, but its blades get stuck between two poles and he falls. After that, he tries a rocket suit with huge pincers, yet Dee Dee bounces off the walls and knocks him down again. He then chases her in a pink spring suit, though she moves away and he gets stuck on the ceiling. Finally, Dexter drops from a bird-shaped ship with metal eagle wings and claws. He swoops down and pops the suit, catching Dee Dee before she falls. After he crashes and cries over the broken suit, Dee Dee fixes it and ties balloons to it, making Dexter float up instead, leaving her giggling while he rises into the air. Late at night in the city, Mental Mouse is overpowering Valhallan by stealing his axe and using it to absorb his powers. Before he can finish, White Tiger jumps in and tackles Mental Mouse, giving Valhallan a chance to take back his axe. Valhallan then uses a comb and some of White Tiger's fur to create static electricity, and with that he pulls his powers back from Mental Mouse. The villain is taken away by the police, and Valhallan and White Tiger return to Muscular Arms to get ready for bed. White Tiger notices a loose string on Valhallan's axe and plays with it, but he accidentally claws himself to Valhallan. After Valhallan goes to his room, White Tiger settles on the couch and falls asleep. A little later, Crunk crashes through the wall to get milk for his teddy bear. White Tiger drinks some milk, starts feeling calm, and Crunk happily pets him. A piece of fur floats into Major Glory's room, waking him and making him sneeze. He sees the cat, gets annoyed, and tries to kick White Tiger out, but White Tiger flips it on him and tosses him outside instead. Major Glory sneaks back in and complains he is allergic to cats, and his sneeze blasts a hole in the wall. At 3 a.m., Major Glory tries to remove White Tiger by dressing Crunk as a mouse, but White Tiger reacts and attacks him. After some chaos, White Tiger drops an anvil on Crunk's head and peacefully goes back to sleep. At 5 a.m., Major Glory tries again to get rid of White Tiger by dressing Crunk up as a scratching post and sending him after the cat. Crunk, feeling determined, walks around the apartment looking for White Tiger. However, when White Tiger spots him, he jumps forward and shreds both the costume and Crunk in seconds. Major Glory is horrified, and things only get worse when White Tiger starts playing with a ball of yarn that slowly unravels Major Glory's American flag cape. Upset, Major Glory leaps at White Tiger, and they begin fighting, with Crunk caught in the middle as they roll and crash around the room. When morning finally comes, Valhallan steps out of his room and finds the entire apartment in a huge mess, with broken walls, scattered fabric, and 3 exhausted heroes. Valhallan, still calm, takes White Tiger with him to get breakfast. Right then, Heckhound suddenly appears at the door, and Crunk sneezes so hard that the top half of Muscular Arms completely blows off, showing just how chaotic the night has been. Dexter is in his lab studying Horton's theory of who when Dee Dee walks in, excited to tell him a story. She explains that she went to meet her friend Lila, who told her another story, and she wants to repeat the whole thing to Dexter. However, Dee Dee keeps talking in a long loop, and Dexter starts getting annoyed. He tries to focus on his work, but Dee Dee talks non-stop, so he keeps telling her to be quiet. However, she ignores him and continues her story with even more energy. To stop her, Dexter quickly offers her a potion and tells her to drink it. Dee Dee happily drinks it, expecting something fun, but instead the potion makes her voice become extremely loud. Dexter suddenly realizes he gave her the wrong formula, and Dee Dee grows into a giant monster version of herself. She stands above Dexter and begins crying loudly because he still refuses to listen to her story. Her huge wails echo through the laboratory, shaking the ground and breaking Dexter's machines and gadgets. Tired of the noise, Dexter yells at her to stop crying and grabs another potion. He drinks a monster potion to fight back, but instead of turning into a strong creature, Dexter transforms into a small slug-like monster and slithers away as Dee Dee chases him around the ruined lab. After turning into a slug-like monster, Dexter hides inside a cocoon to rest and recover from the chaos. Dee Dee sits nearby and waits for him the whole time, ready to finish her story. Months pass, and when Dexter finally hatches from the cocoon right as a timer rings, Dee Dee immediately continues talking, making Dexter panic and burst through a wall to escape. Suddenly, Dee Dee grows huge again, and her fuzzy monster form turns into a creamy white giant creature. Dexter sneaks through the city, trying his best to tiptoe quietly and hide from her, but Dee Dee spots him while he is climbing a tall building. As she gets distracted by a police officer for a moment, Dexter climbs back down and runs. However, Dee Dee transforms again, this time into a giant spider-like monster, and she crawls after him with fast, creepy movements. Both siblings begin a wild battle across the city, smashing buildings, throwing objects, and causing chaos everywhere. Even though Dexter tries his hardest to fight back, Dee Dee overpowers him and wins the fight. Once the dust settles, she happily continues her story again, ending with a silly knock-knock joke. Dexter, completely frustrated, screams to the sky while a huge magnifying glass watches them from above. Dexter walks into his lab ready to start working, but Dee Dee comes in right after, looking for him. Instead of finding Dexter, she discovers a robot sitting quietly in the corner with a wrench stuck in its chest. Dexter crawls out from under the lab door and rushes toward her, but Dee Dee slips from a hanging cord and falls onto the wrench, accidentally pulling it out. This wakes up the robot, who thanks Dee Dee for saving it and starts copying everything she does, which annoys Dexter a lot. Soon the robot follows Dee Dee out of the lab and becomes her new helper. The next morning, the robot helps Dee Dee get ready for school. When Mom tells Dee Dee to leave, the robot happily chooses to go with her. At school, everyone becomes excited about the robot, and kids swing from its arms and play with it. However, during a surprise quiz, the robot whispers answers to Dee Dee, and when a boy accuses her of cheating, the robot fires lasers at him. This gets Dee Dee in trouble, and the robot ends up wearing a dunce cap. Later at home, Dee Dee plays with Lily and Mimi, but when they hurt her feelings, the robot shoots lasers again, causing chaos. Mom walks in, sees the mess, and sends Dee Dee to clean up, while the robot nearly blasts another hole in the wall. After the robot causes even more trouble, Dee Dee finally gets angry and scolds it for hurting her friends and almost hurting Mom. She kicks the robot on the shin to show her frustration, but instead she ends up hurting her own foot. Wanting to complain, she goes to Dexter in his lab and tells him everything the robot did. Instead of feeling sorry for her, Dexter laughs and enjoys seeing her upset, which makes Dee Dee cry. While this happens, the robot peeks through the door and sees Dexter laughing at Dee Dee. Feeling protective, it stomps the ground so hard that Dexter gets pushed back into a wall. With no way to escape, Dexter panics as the robot charges up its lasers to blast him. Right then, Dee Dee notices the same wrench that brought the robot to life. Thinking fast, she throws it at the robot, and once it hits, the robot shuts down immediately and bends forward, completely deactivated. Relieved, Dexter thanks Dee Dee and promises to be loyal to her from now on. The next morning, Dexter tries to help Dee Dee get ready for school. However, Dee Dee quietly admits it does not feel the same without the robot, and this hurts Dexter's feelings. In anger, Dexter's eyes glow red and he fires lasers at her, ending things in chaos once again. In the morning, Dexter and Dee Dee run to the kitchen hoping to eat breakfast first. They sit down, open their cereal boxes, and get excited when they both find secret decoder rings inside, along with 2 sheets of paper holding secret messages. They quickly put the rings on and jump into decoding the messages. However, instead of working quietly, they begin arguing about whose secret club will be better. Dee Dee laughs and tells Dexter that his club is only for big IDKSCs. Dexter rushes to decode the letters, and once he figures out what she meant, he feels very offended and even more determined to prove his club is better. Later, they go to their rooms and continue decoding with full focus. They both work hard and feel proud as they finish their messages, but when they finally read the sheets, they suddenly realize they actually decoded the wrong codes by mistake. They panic and rush out into the hallway, bumping into each other as they ask to borrow something from each other's rooms in order to fix the mess. A little while later, Dexter steps outside wearing a ballerina costume and happily picks flowers from a garden, showing that he clearly decoded Dee Dee's message instead of his own. Meanwhile, Dee Dee's mysterious decoded command stays off-screen, adding a funny twist as Dexter unknowingly follows the wrong secret instructions. Out of nowhere, Dexter is suddenly ambushed. Dee Dee jumps out of the bushes wearing a full army outfit, shouting as if she is leading a surprise attack. Dexter panics and runs, still dressed like a ballerina, completely confused about what is happening. Soon after, Dee Dee is seen in the city inside a tattoo shop, happily getting a tiny tattoo while Dexter arrives at Action Hank headquarters. Before he can even knock, Action Hank's men jump him and tie him up. Action Hank walks over with his big heroic voice and explains that Dexter mixed up his decoder message with Dee Dee's. Everything he's been doing was actually meant for her, and everything she's doing was meant for him. Meanwhile, in another dramatic scene, Dee Dee is being lowered into a giant bubbling pot of oatmeal by Ponypuff Princess and her pink army. The situation looks intense, but Action Hank suddenly bursts in and throws a wrench into their plan. A full cartoon-style battle breaks out between Action Hank's team and the Ponypuffs. During the chaos, Dexter saves Dee Dee and explains the whole code mix-up. Dee Dee proudly shows her tattoo, which turns out to be a tiny gingerbread man drawn on her finger. Dexter just sighs as the madness finally ends. Mom is busy in the kitchen making her famous muffins when Dad sneaks in and starts bothering her. As she gets ready to use the mixer, he jumps in and surprises her, making the batter fly everywhere and splatter both of them. Dad keeps trying to help, but instead he plays with the food processor until Mom unplugs it. She firmly tells him to leave the kitchen, and after he messes with the machine again, she orders him out for good. Dexter and Dee Dee walk into the living room and see Dad sulking in the armchair. He sadly explains that Mom's muffins are the reason he married her, and he can't wait until dinner to eat them. Dexter tries to calm him, but Dad suddenly yells that he needs the muffins right now. The sweet smell floats in from the kitchen, and Dad becomes even more desperate, begging the kids to help him get one. Dee Dee tries to comfort him, and Dad says he'll wait in the chair. Back in the kitchen, Mom pulls a fresh batch from the oven and sets them on the windowsill to cool, not noticing a squirrel nearby. She warns Dee Dee not to touch them, and then remembers she forgot the roast and rushes out. Before she leaves, she warns the kids to keep an eye on Dad because he will try anything to get a muffin. Then she heads to the store, while Dad watches and plots from the window. Dad really wants the muffins, so he walks into the kitchen whistling and acting normal, but when he sees Dexter and Dee Dee guarding the muffins with serious faces, he quietly leaves. He goes to his bedroom and tries a new plan. Soon, he comes back to the kitchen disguised as Mom, pretending everything is fine, and he happily tells Dexter and Dee Dee that he will take them to Chubby Cheese for dinner. The kids get excited and rush out, and Dad finally reaches for the muffins, thinking his plan worked and feeling proud. However, when Dexter and Dee Dee are heading to the door, Dexter suddenly notices that Mom looked a bit too stubbly. They both rush back to the kitchen with a camera, and Dexter takes photos of Dad in the disguise. Dee Dee then blackmails him by saying she will show the photos to the people at his office, so Dad gives up and promises to behave. They send him to his room and tell him to stay away from the kitchen. While sitting angrily in his room, Dad thinks of another idea and tries again, this time hypnotizing Dexter into helping him get the muffins. Dee Dee snaps Dexter out of it and sends Dad back upstairs. Feeling defeated, Dad wishes he could eat muffins forever, and suddenly he appears in a magical muffin land where talking muffins make him their king. Dad, still determined to get the muffins, promises himself that he will go to the kitchen and finally take them. However, a squirrel watches him from nearby, which already hints that things won't be easy. When Dad enters the kitchen, he is shocked to find life-size paper cutouts of Dexter and Dee Dee standing guard. Suddenly, the cutouts start attacking him. firing cheese and cleaning spray at him like they are real defenders. Dad fights back by throwing an apple like a grenade, which makes the fake kids scatter, and he believes he has won at last. Feeling confident, Dad jumps toward the muffins with excitement. However, his victory is short-lived because the squirrel suddenly steals the whole muffin tray. Dad and the squirrel wrestle and crash into a tree, and after the struggle, Dad demands the muffins back. He then decides to give Dee Dee the responsibility of protecting them until dinner, pretending to be responsible this time. Mom returns home and is very happy that the muffins are safe, and she rewards Dad with a kiss and lets him eat one. As the family goes inside, Dad secretly meets the squirrel and hands it a bag of peanuts as a thank you, and while the squirrel happily eats the peanuts, Dad finally gets to enjoy the muffins he worked so hard for. Dexter is deep in his lab, proudly working on his new invention, the pistol-enhanced laser syringe, when Dee Dee walks in and interrupts him. She happily tells him about her science project, which actually makes Dexter excited. He thinks she finally wants real science help. He starts bragging about how he can assist her in amazing ways, but Dee Dee quickly shuts him down by saying she only needs tape. Dexter thinks she's joking and laughs, acting like she surely wants his genius assistance. But Dee Dee gets annoyed and storms out to find tape on her own. Dexter stops laughing and stands there shocked, confused that she really doesn't want his help. His brain can't process the idea that Dee Dee would rather use tape than him. In the kitchen, Dee Dee happily works on her little science project with normal household items. Dexter sneaks in, dramatically showing off his invention like he's offering a gift to humanity. Dee Dee once again explains that she's only allowed to use household stuff and does not need help from his super genius laboratory. Dexter leaves the kitchen grumpy and offended that his brilliant mind is being ignored for glue and tape. Still unable to accept defeat, Dexter decides to get sneaky. He sends a mom droid into the kitchen, pretending it's Mom checking on Dee Dee. The robot, speaking in Mom's voice, asks about the project. Dee Dee repeats that she doesn't need Dexter's help at all. The mom droid snaps, overheating with rage and starting to rant like a glitchy mom bot. During the chaos, Dad casually walks in, sees the mom droid, and, thinking it's actually Mom, gives it a playful pinch on the rear. Dad has no idea he just flirted with a robot. Meanwhile, Dexter's plan is clearly going downhill fast. Dexter later gives Dee Dee a special intercom so she can call him directly from the kitchen to his lab, thinking she will finally need him. He waits proudly, imagining her begging for his genius help. But hours pass and Dee Dee never calls, so Dexter gets bored and frustrated. At night, the intercom finally buzzes and Dexter sprints to the kitchen with his invention in hand. Dee Dee shows him her simple propulsion project, and Dexter immediately mocks it for being too basic. He tells her she needs real science if she wants a better grade. Dee Dee thinks about it, then gives in and lets him help. Dexter grabs her project and runs off like an excited mad scientist. The next day at school, the students present their propulsion projects. Some work fine, some fail, and everyone is nervous. When it's Dee Dee's turn, she explains her project shyly while Dexter watches from outside the window like a proud but dramatic inventor. Dee Dee reveals a tiny pink car with a rocket on the back. She presses the remote button, expecting a small push. Instead, the rocket blasts her so hard that she flies straight out of the classroom, and the entire school launches into space like a rocket ship. Dexter and Dee Dee hop onto the pink rocket car and speed away, racing toward the border, laughing as chaos erupts behind them. After a long and exhausting day of dealing with Dee Dee's wild behavior, Dexter finally reaches his limit. He calls her into his lab office and, without a real reason, fires her from messing around in his lab. At first, Dexter enjoys the peace and quiet. He works faster, finishes his inventions, and everything feels calm. But soon he realizes that the silence is boring, and even though Dee Dee drove him crazy, life without her isn't fun at all. Wanting the chaos back, Dexter decides to do the most logical thing in his mind. He opens applications for a new, annoying older sister. Many strange and disappointing candidates show up, each one failing to match Dee Dee's unique level of chaos. Just when Dexter starts to lose hope, a blonde girl named Candy arrives. She is cheerful, pretty, and energetic, so Dexter hires her right away. Dexter then tries to train Candy to act like Dee Dee, teaching her how to dance around the lab, press random buttons, and cause silly disasters. However, Candy quickly gets confused, especially as Dexter keeps getting flustered around her because he clearly has a crush. When she finally discovers that Dexter is not part of a TV show and actually has a real secret lab, she quits in shock and leaves. Dexter is left sitting alone again, realizing that even with all her craziness, no one can replace Dee Dee. Dexter's parents worry that he spends too much time locked in his lab, so they force him to take piano lessons. Dexter is not happy at all, especially since they once tried the same thing with Dee Dee, who now bangs on the piano like a chaotic drum set. During his first lesson, Professor Williams tries to teach Dexter how to play arpeggios. Dexter refuses to cooperate, but the professor stays calm and tells him to practice until the next lesson. Time passes through different seasons, yet Dexter still does not improve, mainly because he never actually practices. When the next lesson day comes, Dexter is busy in his lab and ignores everything. Professor Williams comes looking for him, accidentally walks into Dexter's room, and because he is the same height as Dexter, the lab scanner mistakes him for Dexter and lets him inside. Professor Williams is amazed by the huge lab, while Dexter panics and tries to push him out. The professor then hears a machine making a sound like an arpeggio, which gives him an idea. Suddenly, he bursts into a musical song about mixing music and science. Slowly, Dexter joins in, playing a musical solo using one of his machines. They laugh together after the performance, but once the professor leaves, Dexter's smile fades. Annoyed by the music again, Dexter grabs a wrench and smashes the arpeggio machine to silence it, showing his dislike for piano lessons is still very much alive. Mandark is enjoying a calm day at the beach, studying and relaxing until he spots Dee Dee. Right away, he becomes love-struck and decides he must impress her. He tries changing his hair and doing cool poses, but nothing works, especially because Dee Dee already has her eyes on a popular surfer boy. Jealous and determined, Mandark learns about a surfing competition and believes that if he beats the surfer boy, Dee Dee will fall in love with him. Mandark tries surfing, yet he does very badly and gets tossed around by the waves. As he sinks underwater, he meets the Tiki God, who gives him advice about surfing. Motivated again, Mandark returns to his lab and builds a special high-tech surfboard to help him win. He also sets sneaky traps around the surf area so the other surfers will fail, especially the surfer boy. When the contest begins the next day, Mandark discovers that the surfer boy is not joining, and instead, Dee Dee is the last-minute contestant. Horrified, he realizes she will hit his traps. So, Mandark rushes to protect her from danger, taking all the hits himself. He nearly drowns until the surfer boy rescues him. Dee Dee wins the contest, and the crowd celebrates her. Meanwhile, Mandark and the surfer boy become friends and happily leave together to surf safely in Mandark's wave pool. Yanni, the tired janitor at Huber Elementary, has finally had enough of Dexter's constant messes. Because of Dexter, he always ends up working late at night, and today he's done being the nice guy. Meanwhile, Dexter stays after school to finish a new invention. Just then, computer alerts him that Dee Dee is destroying his lab again. Dexter freaks out and decides he needs to get home fast. But Yanni has other plans. He quietly locks every classroom door, shuts the windows, and turns on all the security cameras. Dexter finishes packing and tries to leave, only to find the lab door locked. He tells Yanni he's going home, but Yanni refuses and blocks him in. Thinking quick, Dexter pulls the fire alarm to call the firefighters. When the chief demands the school be opened, Yanni coolly says it's just a glitch in the system. Shockingly, the firefighters believe him and leave. Now realizing Dexter is trying to escape, Yanni rushes back to the security room and sees Dexter crawling in the vents. To smoke him out, Yanni cranks up the heat in the vents. Dexter speeds up, sweating, and ends up in a large set of ventilation ducts. He crawls into one, only to get blasted out by a giant fan and launched back into the school halls. Dexter crash lands on top of an elevator, which suddenly shoots upward. He tries to stop it by digging his heels in, though the friction makes his boots catch fire. Just before he hits the top, the elevator suddenly drops, forcing Dexter to leap into another vent. He crawls through and ends up back in the school hallway, giving Yanni the advantage again. Dexter dashes down the hall, searching for any escape route, but metal gates slam down one after another, blocking his path. He bursts into the cafeteria and finds himself face to face with Yanni. With a smug grin, Yanni opens the exit door and tells Dexter to go home, clearly trying to trick him. Instead of falling for it, Dexter sprints toward him, ready to push past. Yanni quickly attacks by pelting Dexter with ketchup packets and then flinging sporks like tiny plastic spears. Frustrated, Dexter tries the cafeteria doors, but they slam shut right before he reaches them. Dexter fires back by ordering Yanni to clean up the mess, which makes Yanni furious. The two start fighting, but the chaos stops when Yanni's wife suddenly bursts through the doors. She scolds Yanni for staying late and accuses him of messing around instead of coming home. Feeling defeated, Yanni leaves with her. Dexter picks up the keys, unlocks the doors, and strolls home happily, whistling Jingle Bells. Dexter is busy in his lab working on inventions, while at Mandark's house, Computress is fixing everything Mandark destroyed. When Computress is finally done, Mandark heartlessly kicks him out of the house. Hurt and angry, Computress heads to Dexter's lab, where Dexter agrees to help him get revenge. Together they plan to shrink Mandark's head, and they start building a shrink ray. Dee Dee suddenly walks in, but Dexter quickly uses a mind control beam to send her away so she won't interfere. To trick Mandark, Computress writes a fake love letter from Dee Dee, and Dexter writes one from Mandark to Dee Dee. Computress gives Mandark's love letter to the mailman, while Dexter uses a chute to send Dee Dee's fake letter to Mandark. Mandark reads his letter, becomes instantly love-struck, and races to Dexter's house. Dee Dee finds her letter but tosses it in the trash, not caring at all. In Dexter's lab, Mandark arrives and excitedly kisses the shrink ray, believing it's Dee Dee. Dexter and Computress blast him, shrinking his head. They laugh, but Computress accidentally hits the lever again, switching it to grow Mandark's head balloons to a massive size. Dexter tries to stop Computress, but the machine fires again, making Mandark's head explode into countless tiny Mandark heads that reign over the earth. Dexter scolds Computress, who sadly walks away, feeling defeated. Dexter is studying a floating green orb in his lab when Dee Dee suddenly reaches over and touches it, making it explode and sending the story into an opera-style flashback. The scene shifts to a maternity ward where Dad nervously paces, wondering what his new baby will be like. Inside, Mom prays for her child while the doctors encourage her to breathe, though she soon screams from the pain. When the baby is born, the doctor proudly tells Dad he has a son. Dad cheers, but his excitement slows when he sees infant Dexter's unusually large head. The doctor explains that Dexter is clinically genius and gives him tiny glasses. At home, Mom and Dad introduce baby Dexter to Dee Dee. Dee Dee is thrilled to have a baby brother, but when she pokes his belly, Dexter cries loudly. Time passes, and Dexter builds his first invention, a claw machine that grabs a pear. Dee Dee immediately breaks it. Dexter tries again by making a flying pig toy, but Dee Dee ruins it too. He then builds a space helmet, only for Dee Dee to destroy that as well. Finally, Dexter creates his secret lab behind a bookcase. Yet Dee Dee finds it and blows it up by pressing a button. In the end, baby Dexter stands in ruins and dramatically accepts that he is forever cursed with Dee Dee. Dexter's family is rushing like crazy in the morning, and Mom runs to wake up Toshi, a student from Japan who is staying with them. In the next moment, Dexter is suddenly back in Japan, where he uses his giant robot to battle other kids and giant robots too. It is loud, wild, and totally awesome until the teacher starts yelling at everyone for being irresponsible. Dexter tries to calm down, but his robot accidentally fires rockets into Mount Fujiyashiyama, a nearby volcano. The explosion wakes up a huge monster named Badaxtra. Chaos starts. The teacher screams and the kids run. Dexter barely escapes from getting crushed, and Badaxtra begins stomping through the city like it is a cardboard model. Then, in what looks like New York, Agent Honeydew and the global security team try stopping the monster. They fail badly. The commander warns the Justice Friends, and they heroically charge in. Capital G grows giant, but he is still only half Badaxtra's height and gets flicked away. Tiki Torch tries his fiery move but ends up burnt and spat on. Valhallan plays his guitar so loud it actually hurts the monster, but 4 screaming fans jump on him. Krunk throws Badaxtra into the sky, but the monster falls back down and crushes everyone. The commander tries missiles, fails, and Honeydew calls Monkey. Dexter rushes home, realizes he cannot do this alone, and teams up with Dee Dee, Toshi, Mom, and Dad, even if it means revealing his secret lab at last. After Monkey also falls to Bad Extra, things look really bad. Dexter's parents finally step in to help, and they tell him that once this is over, they are going to have a serious talk about his secret lab. But for now, they must save the world. So, the whole family hops into 4 giant vehicles that combine into Dexter's strongest robot ever, the Multiformic Megabot. At first, they try fighting the monster with pure force, but even with all that power, they struggle and almost lose again. Then Toshi shares a special idea. He explains that they need to fight using the power of unity and love, which means working together and staying in sync. With that, the family starts moving as one, and suddenly the Megabot becomes stronger and faster. They turn the battle around and almost beat Badaxtra, but then Mandark jumps in, bragging and trying to help, yet he only makes the monster stronger. Luckily, Monkey returns and adds his power to the Megabot. With one huge supercharged strike, they finally defeat Badaxtra. After the battle, Dexter learns Monkey's secret identity. Mom and Dad also begin the talk about his lab. To avoid trouble, Dexter erases his parents' memories. Then Monkey erases Dexter's memories so he forgets Monkey's identity too. Mandark acts like he was the hero, which makes Dexter sad because he believes it. In the end, Dee Dee is the only one who remembers the big fight, and she gives a cheerful wave. Mom is doing her holiday shopping at Newman's, walking calmly through the aisles and looking for good deals, when suddenly the store intercom announces a special red light sale on latex gloves. Right away, Mom spots another shopper at the end of the aisle, and both realize they want the same thing. Because of this, they take off running toward aisle 8, and when they arrive, they see only one box of latex gloves sitting on a display. Mom makes the first aggressive move by pushing her shopping cart toward the other woman, yet the woman jumps over it with quick reflexes. Mom reaches for the gloves, but the woman grabs her wrist and kicks her in the head. After tasting blood and getting angry, Mom fights back, and she throws fast punches and kicks, while the other woman counters by using her own cart to slam Mom into a shelf. To escape and stay in the fight, Mom jumps up the shelves like an action hero, then leaps from the top onto the kiosk, aiming straight for the gloves. The other woman drop kicks her, causing Mom to almost lose her grip, but Mom recovers quickly. She uses her legs to flip the woman across the aisle, then continues the battle with more kicks and grabs. Finally, Mom wins the fight, grabs the latex gloves, and places them in her cart as if nothing unusual happened. As she continues shopping, the intercom announces another sale, and Mom smirks, ready for the next battle. Dexter proudly shows Mordecai a detailed schematic for one of his latest inventions, then safely tucks it into his lunchbox so nothing happens to it. But things go wrong fast when a girl packing her lunch accidentally gets sprayed by water, panics, and grabs Dexter's lunchbox by mistake. Dexter and Mordecai watch in horror as she walks straight into the girl's bathroom. With no choice, they put on ridiculous girl disguises and sneak inside to retrieve the lunchbox. Inside, they spot the girl placing the lunchbox near a stall at the far end. Dexter quietly uses a hook device to snag the lunchbox back, but just as they're escaping the magical stall area, which somehow leads into a weird fantasy realm, Mordecai suddenly has to go. He rushes into the stall and then returns, feeling relieved. But the moment a girl walks into that same stall, she immediately notices the toilet seat is up, realizing boys have been there. Chaos begins to build as the other girls suspect intruders. Thinking fast, Dexter grabs a doll belonging to one of them and threatens to destroy it unless they can leave quietly. This surprisingly works, and Dexter and Mordecai rush out of the bathroom still wearing their disguises. Right when they think they're safe, a group of jocks sees them dressed up and bursts into laughter. Dexter turns red with embarrassment while Mordecai tries to hide, and they both hurry away before the teasing gets louder. Dexter marches into the lab holding a crisp blueprint and rolls it across his desk like a proud architect ready to build greatness. But the moment he steps away, Dee Dee prances in and slaps down her bright pink print right on top. Dexter returns, freezes, and stares at the bubblegum pink disaster covering his work. He storms off to grab pink wood planks and paint because apparently now everything is pink. Until he realizes what he's doing, crumples Dee Dee's pink print, and tosses it like a basketball into the trash. He grabs his proper blue supplies instead, only to come back and find another pink print sitting smugly on top of his blueprint. He rips that one up too. The blueprint rolls in surprise. Dee Dee's pink print is hiding underneath. Fed up, he hammers his blueprint in place like it's a crime scene he needs secured forever. Next, the siblings lay down tiles. Blue for Dexter, pink for Dee Dee. When they finish, Dexter looks down and sees pink sneaking into his perfect blue pattern. He silently breaks, tosses the tiles everywhere, and leaves a chaotic checkerboard floor. Then, while welding the lab walls, he accidentally welds a pink wall Dee Dee slips in. He looks up to find a whole row of pink walls taunting him and immediately returns in a bulldoze. Finally, he installs blue bulbs on the ceiling using a lift, while Dee Dee gleefully swaps them for pink behind his back. He flips the switch. The lab glows pink. Dexter collapses in defeat as Dee Dee wiggles her eyebrows and struts off triumphantly. Dexter is busy in his lab, focused and serious, when Dee Dee suddenly steps right into his space like usual. She leans close, blocks his work, and annoys him to the edge of madness. Looking for a smart fix instead of yelling again, Dexter asks computer for help. The solution? Change Dee Dee's magnetic polarity to positive so she can't get near him anymore. Feeling confident, Dexter tests it out by asking Dee Dee for a hug. Overjoyed, she runs at him full speed, only to be stopped mid-air by the magnetic force. Hurt and confused, she runs away crying while Dexter slams the red button on his remote with pride. But soon, karma hits hard. While Dexter works, the polarity flips, and suddenly he's flying across the lab, dragged by Dee Dee's magnetic pull as she innocently goes to the kitchen for lunch. Dexter gets yanked around like a rag doll until he finally reaches the remote and switches himself back to repel mode. Later, Dexter tries again to work, but Dee Dee returns, and the repel force launches him like a bowling ball across the lab. He smashes through equipment, slips down a hole, and reaches his breaking point. Ready to shut the whole program off forever, he chases Dee Dee, but she leaves the lab with the remote. The magnetic forces push them apart across the kitchen while they argue non-stop. Mom walks in, grabs the remote, and orders both kids to stop fighting and make up right now. Dee Dee tries to hug Dexter, the magnet effect still goes wild, and Mom drops the remote, shattering it. The magnetic field shuts off. Dee Dee hugs Dexter, and he breaks down crying while Mom smiles proudly, thinking her peaceful parenting finally worked. The Dexter family is sitting in the kitchen eating beef loaf while Dexter tries to start a serious conversation. Nobody listens, so Dexter grows upset and thinks about disappearing. Suddenly, without warning, he and his family get sucked up into space and land inside an alien spaceship. Strange hissing aliens surround them, and their leader picks Dexter up like he's some kind of chosen hero. The leader begs Dexter for help with the crisis, but Dexter refuses, annoyed and stubborn. The alien drops him to the floor and orders his army to seize the family. Dexter is dragged away by tiny aliens toward a mysterious fourth transference chamber, while Mom, Dad, and Dee Dee are tied up and helpless. Hearing Dexter yell for help, Mom slips her hands out of her gloves, then slips the gloves back on to punch the alien guard square in the face. As soon as she frees herself, another alien tackles her. Dad, not wanting to be shown up, breaks free and charges in to save her. Dee Dee also escapes, but tiny aliens rush her. Mom grabs a mop from a cleaning alien and uses it like a battle spear, smacking aliens off Dee Dee and knocking guards away like she's in a space martial arts movie. Dee Dee spots 3 alien scooters, so the family hops on and zooms through the ship while aliens chase them. They ditch the scooters and shoot up vacuum tubes that drop them underwater in another area. A giant alien grabs Dee Dee, so Mom dives in to save her again. Dad rips off the alien's oxygen mask, making it swell with water like a balloon and sink to the bottom, as the family swims onward to rescue Dexter. Dexter is strapped to an alien operation table, while the alien leader studies his personality results, trying to understand his genius mind. The leader wants to extract Dexter's technology from him, but even he gets exhausted and reluctantly gives his troops a break. Lying there, Dexter talks sadly about wishing he could just be a normal kid for once. Right then, he hears his mom calling his name. His whole mood changes, and he brightens up when he sees his family bursting in to save him. Mom, Dad, Dee Dee, and Dexter sprint for the exit, but the aliens and their leader surround them again. A massive swarm of tiny aliens blocks their path, and the leader moves closer to finish things. Dexter and Dee Dee share a quick hug, and then Dexter reminds her about a hidden button. Dee Dee slams it without hesitation, and a hatch opens in the ceiling, shooting the family upward through a platform launch tube. They land in another strange room, and Dexter casually explains what it is, leaving his family confused as always. Before they can celebrate, the alien leader appears again. This time, Dexter proudly introduces his family, and together they decide to fight back. Dexter climbs onto the leader's nose. Dad punches him in the eye, Dee Dee tickles his chin, and Mom pulls a loose string that makes the alien leader's outfit unravel. Embarrassed, the alien leader nearly cries and runs away while all the other aliens laugh at him. With the danger gone, the family heads home. Mom wonders why the aliens even wanted Dexter, and he nervously shrugs it off, saying, "You know how kooky those aliens can be? Glad to be safe and normal again?" Dexter walks through the quiet library, fully focused on rules and order. When he hears a boy and girl whispering, he quickly reminds them of the strict library rules and snatches their books away. He continues patrolling like a tiny librarian police chief. Soon, he sees another boy secretly eating lunch between the shelves. Dexter immediately grabs the apple and his book, scolding him for eating in such a sacred place. Farther ahead, a girl uses a stack of library books as a step stool to reach a high shelf. Dexter rushes over, takes the book from under her, and she falls flat as he rolls away with his cart, satisfied with his work. Reaching the tallest shelf, Dexter finds green bacon and eggs in the wrong section. Shocked, he reports it to Ms. Salinger, but she simply tells him to put it back. Dexter grumbles and then imagines how perfect the library would be if he were in charge. Right then, Ms. Salinger says she must leave for a meeting for an hour, giving Dexter the opening he needed. He grins and begins transforming the library into a strict fortress of silence and order. A little girl cautiously enters, only to be surrounded by 3 buzzing security drones. Another student lightly taps his desk, creating a tiny sound, and instantly gets snatched by a vacuum tube drone. The poor boy is shot through pipes and dropped into a waste bin like scraps. One by one, more kids who break rules face the same dramatic fate. Dexter proudly watches his perfect library run like a machine. When Sarah Goldman returns her book, Dexter has a robot burn it and fetch one he considers age-appropriate, while Sarah trembles, realizing this is not the friendly school library anymore. Dexter stands proudly in his new perfect library until a robot tells him there is no book that matches what he wants for Sarah. Annoyed, Dexter slaps the robot and orders it to try again. The robot returns and reports the same thing. The book he listed does not exist. Furious, Dexter punches the robot's sensor and storms off to find the book himself, convinced he can do it better. He reaches the shelf he believes is correct, only to see green bacon and eggs sitting right back where he first found it. This drives him over the edge. His frustration rings through the library as he grabs the book and angrily throws it at another shelf. That one simple throw starts a terrible chain reaction. Books begin falling everywhere. Shelves shake and collapse one after another. Dexter watches with horror as the entire library crashes down in a huge book avalanche, destroying the order he tried so hard to create. A moment later, Ms. Salinger returns and sees the giant mess spread across the floor. Dexter hurriedly tries to explain what happened, hoping she understands. Instead, she gives him the maximum library penalty. But instead of something scary, it means Dexter can only check out 4 books instead of 5. To him, it is the worst punishment ever. Dexter completely breaks down. He starts crying loudly, kicking his feet and shouting "No!" again and again. His dramatic tantrum fills the ruined library, until someone off-screen simply shushes him, reminding him that even after all the chaos, it is still a library. Dexter stands outside Dee Dee's room, mumbling to himself about what it means to have her as a sister. Before he can finish complaining, she calls him inside. When he walks in, he finds Dee Dee dressed like a fortune teller. She gestures dramatically for him to sit, and Dexter rolls his eyes but takes a seat at the table anyway. Dee Dee looks into her crystal ball and announces predictions. Dexter with a totally different hairstyle, Dexter surrounded by men in a sauna, and a hopping, angry polka-dotted bunny. Dexter instantly dismisses everything she says as ridiculous and gets up to leave, convinced her visions are nonsense. In the hallway, Dexter spots an unplugged lamp. He plugs it in, gets a sudden shock, and ends up with his hair standing wildly. When he glances at the mirror, he sees a transparent snowman behind him. He turns around and sees nothing, then nervously heads downstairs. Dexter asks Dad if he saw someone in a snowman costume. Dad misunderstands, thinks Dexter is talking about Christmas and Halloween, and rushes upstairs in confusion. Dexter goes to Mom in the kitchen, where she is baking cookies. He tells her he is stressed, and she offers him gingerbread men fresh from the oven. Dexter spots the snowman's reflection on the baking pan and realizes another prediction came true. Meanwhile, Dad comes down the hallway in a bunny suit with a polka dot vest, stubs his toe, then angrily hops downstairs on one foot. Seeing these signs, Dexter panics and runs back to Dee Dee. Dee Dee looks into her ball again and says a snowman is following him. When Dexter sees it again, he freaks out, knocks over the table, and sees the crystal ball was just a snow globe. As he readies a karate chop, Dee Dee reads his palm and warns the end is near, which Dexter stubbornly refuses to believe. Dexter carries nuclear waste over to a box of apples and pours it on them, watching one apple grow huge right in front of him. Excited, he jumps out of his suit and celebrates, thinking the experiment worked perfectly. But the giant apple suddenly shrinks back to normal size, disappointing Dexter. Annoyed, he throws the whole box of apples out the window. Dee Dee shows up and Dexter quickly tells her to leave his lab. She obeys and walks away, but she grabs an apple and takes a bite. In seconds, she turns into a giant monster version of herself. Dexter rides back on his conveyor belt and freezes when he sees huge monster Dee Dee towering over him. Scared, he runs through the lab as Dee Dee chases him and smashes everything in sight. He rushes into a hallway, and just like that, Dee Dee turns back into her normal self. Relieved, Dexter tells her about the monster he saw and asks her to hide with him. Dee Dee agrees and has him hide inside a glass tube, but then she transforms again. She tricks Dexter several times, putting him in places like a drawer, and then turning into a monster again, forcing him to run screaming each time. Dee Dee brings Dexter to different hiding spots and even sprays him with invisible spray, but monster Dee Dee licks him, revealing him again. She throws him into the particle accelerator, and when Dexter begs her to turn it off, she turns into a monster and gets stuck in it herself. Dexter keeps running, hiding in dangerous spots like a nuclear flask, and finally hides inside a robot's nose. Thinking Dee Dee has been eaten, he runs to Mom and Dad. They tell him he is safe, while happily eating the radioactive apples. Dexter is busy in his lab, proudly testing his newest invention, the Defendotron. Everything is going smoothly until he opens the lab door, expecting Dee Dee, but instead, Dad sleepwalks inside. Dexter is shocked, since out of everyone, Dad is the last person he expected to wander into his secret lab. While Dexter turns away for a moment, Dad stumbles toward a shelf full of rare chemicals. Without stopping, he bumps into it and sends the whole shelf crashing down. One by one, other shelves fall like dominoes, shattering flasks everywhere. When the final shelf tips over, a bottle of invisibility oxide spills all over Dad, making him completely invisible. Dexter panics, thinking he crushed Dad under the fallen shelf until he hears loud sleep snores echoing through the room. Realizing Dad is still roaming around, Dexter grabs a bucket of water and splashes it toward the sound. The water hits Dad, revealing his shape, just in time for the deatomizer to fire and shrink him by accident. Dexter rushes to grab the reatomizer to fix everything, but instead he blasts Dad and turns him into a giant. Dad sleepwalks through the lab, smashing equipment and walls while Dexter watches helplessly. Once the reatomizer recharges, Dexter fires again, shrinking Dad's head into a vent pipe, then tries fixing it, only to send Dad sliding into the pipe and out the other side. Still sleepwalking, Dad mistakes a flask of Z19 for water, drinks it, and turns into a fire-breathing monster. He burns Dexter's desk, forcing Dexter to throw an antidote into his mouth, returning him to normal. Dad wakes up confused, so Dexter distracts him with a silly dance until he falls asleep again. Dexter pushes him out, only to get smacked by the Defendotron himself. Dad ends up safe in bed, waking briefly to say he's a light sleeper. Dexter spends hours working hard in his lab, sweating and tired, so he decides to step outside for a quick drink break. When he returns, he gets the shock of his life. Dee Dee has set up a stand and is selling his latest invention to random people. Dexter rushes over, furious, but Dee Dee excitedly convinces him that they could sell the invention as hats instead of science devices. Somehow Dexter falls for the idea. Soon, the hat business grows fast, turning from a tiny stand into a huge booming company. There are factories, workers, money flowing everywhere, and Dee Dee and Dexter sitting proudly in their office like real business owners. But then, a major problem appears. The invention was designed to magnify molecules, so when people wear it on their heads, it doesn't just act like a hat. It makes their heads grow huge. Chaos spreads as customers walk around with giant balloon-like heads. Worried and guilty, Dexter jumps into action. He invents a special ointment that shrinks heads back to normal and decides to fix everything. He copies 50 million tubes of ointment and mails them out, along with refunds, one by one. It is a long and painful process, but eventually Dexter fixes the disaster his hat empire created. Just when Dexter breathes a sigh of relief, thinking the nightmare is finally over, Dee Dee speaks up again. She happily tells him that she also sold one of his other inventions, the ones that look like shoes. At first, Dexter thinks it might not be so bad, but Dee Dee reveals what they actually do. Instead of helping people, they make feet huge and hairy. Dexter freezes in horror, realizing another wave of trouble is about to begin, all thanks to Dee Dee's business ideas. He reaches the shelf he believes is correct, only to see green bacon and eggs sitting right back where he first found it. This drives him over the edge. His frustration rings through the library as he grabs the book and angrily throws it at another shelf. That one simple throw starts a terrible chain reaction. Books begin falling everywhere. Shelves shake and collapse one after another. Dexter watches with horror as the entire library crashes down in a huge book avalanche, destroying the order he tried so hard to create. A moment later, Ms. Salinger returns and sees the giant mess spread across the floor. Dexter hurriedly tries to explain what happened, hoping she understands. Instead, she gives him the maximum library penalty. But instead of something scary, it means Dexter can only check out 4 books instead of 5. To him, it is the worst punishment ever. Dexter completely breaks down. He starts crying loudly, kicking his feet and shouting "No!" again and again. His dramatic tantrum fills the ruined library, until someone off-screen simply shushes him, reminding him that even after all the chaos, it is still a library. Dexter stands outside Dee Dee's room, mumbling to himself about what it means to have her as a sister. Before he can finish complaining, she calls him inside. When he walks in, he finds Dee Dee dressed like a fortune teller. She gestures dramatically for him to sit, and Dexter rolls his eyes but takes a seat at the table anyway. Dee Dee looks into her crystal ball and announces predictions. Dexter with a totally different hairstyle, Dexter surrounded by men in a sauna, and a hopping, angry polka-dotted bunny. Dexter instantly dismisses everything she says as ridiculous and gets up to leave, convinced her visions are nonsense. In the hallway, Dexter spots an unplugged lamp. He plugs it in, gets a sudden shock, and ends up with his hair standing wildly. When he glances at the mirror, he sees a transparent snowman behind him. He turns around and sees nothing, then nervously heads downstairs. Dexter asks Dad if he saw someone in a snowman costume. Dad misunderstands, thinks Dexter is talking about Christmas and Halloween, and rushes upstairs in confusion. Dexter goes to Mom in the kitchen, where she is baking cookies. He tells her he is stressed, and she offers him gingerbread men fresh from the oven. Dexter spots the snowman's reflection on the baking pan and realizes another prediction came true. Meanwhile, Dad comes down the hallway in a bunny suit with a polka dot vest, stubs his toe, then angrily hops downstairs on one foot. Seeing these signs, Dexter panics and runs back to Dee Dee. Dee Dee looks into her ball again and says a snowman is following him. When Dexter sees it again, he freaks out, knocks over the table, and sees the crystal ball was just a snow globe. As he readies a karate chop, Dee Dee reads his palm and warns the end is near, which Dexter stubbornly refuses to believe. Dexter carries nuclear waste over to a box of apples and pours it on them, watching one apple grow huge right in front of him. Excited, he jumps out of his suit and celebrates, thinking the experiment worked perfectly. But the giant apple suddenly shrinks back to normal size, disappointing Dexter. Annoyed, he throws the whole box of apples out the window. Dee Dee shows up and Dexter quickly tells her to leave his lab. She obeys and walks away, but she grabs an apple and takes a bite. In seconds, she turns into a giant monster version of herself. Dexter rides back on his conveyor belt and freezes when he sees huge monster Dee Dee towering over him. Scared, he runs through the lab as Dee Dee chases him and smashes everything in sight. He rushes into a hallway, and just like that, Dee Dee turns back into her normal self. Relieved, Dexter tells her about the monster he saw and asks her to hide with him. Dee Dee agrees and has him hide inside a glass tube, but then she transforms again. She tricks Dexter several times, putting him in places like a drawer, and then turning into a monster again, forcing him to run screaming each time. Dee Dee brings Dexter to different hiding spots and even sprays him with invisible spray, but monster Dee Dee licks him, revealing him again. She throws him into the particle accelerator, and when Dexter begs her to turn it off, she turns into a monster and gets stuck in it herself. Dexter keeps running, hiding in dangerous spots like a nuclear flask, and finally hides inside a robot's nose. Thinking Dee Dee has been eaten, he runs to Mom and Dad. They tell him he is safe, while happily eating the radioactive apples. Dexter and Mandark are having a tea party with Dee Dee in Dexter's lab, which is now covered with pink, frilly, girly stuff. Both boys begin to plot against her before Mandark steals it back from her and writes down for Dexter to do endless push-ups. Dee Dee demands he stops, and he agrees after writing for her to kiss him. Against her will, Dee Dee kisses Mandark on the lips and reacts in disgust. She then punches him in the gut and he drops the pen. After this, the argument breaks out into a huge fight and they all keep writing down stuff for them all to do, and the fight just gets more and more out of control until they all pile up on top of each other and the pen rolls out of reach of all of them. Then, Monkey picks it up and writes down for them to give him bananas, fruits, coconuts, jungle trees, a tire swing, and a girl monkey. Monkey is laughing because he is now the one in control of them. Dexter is in his class showing a new way to power an alarm clock, but his invention goes wrong and blows up the whole school. Then Mordecai is called to the front, and he shows a potato that can power an alarm clock. Dexter laughs at Mordecai and makes fun of him, but the other students gather around Mordecai and Mr. Luzinski praises him for using a safe idea. When the bell rings, everyone runs out of the classroom except Dexter. He looks at Mordecai's potato project and suddenly gets an idea. Dexter takes the potato home and tests the idea in his lab. He plugs a device into the potato, but it shorts out fast. Computer explains that the power is not strong enough, so Dexter needs more potatoes. Dexter finds Mom in the kitchen peeling potatoes, and he quickly takes one. Back in the lab, the same thing happens again, so he goes back for more. He tries to grab the whole bag, but Dad stops him and makes him eat dinner. Dexter hears everyone at the table talk about potatoes, so he takes all the potato food back to the lab. He tests again, but it still fails, and he becomes frustrated. Dexter then goes around town asking people for potatoes. Soon, his lab is filled with potatoes everywhere. He plugs one in, and this time, the whole lab turns on at full power. Computer says the test worked, and Dexter ends his day. The next morning, the house fills with a bad smell, and Dexter sees that all the potatoes rotted. He thinks again and tries a new idea. Outside, the entire planet has turned into potato ground, and Dexter uses it as his power source. Episode 6B, Tuber Time. In his workshop, Dexter forges a sword and gets ready for a big journey to take over a throne. He steps into a thick, foggy forest, and soon he sees tall, skeleton-like monsters. Dexter twists one of their legs using the bottom of his sword, then slices through the rest of them, turning the monsters into piles of bones. After that, he keeps going. He walks across a wide grassland and then enters a canyon. There, a giant golem appears, standing high above him. Dexter dodges its attacks and tries slicing it many times with his sword, but nothing works. The golem knocks him toward a cliff, and Dexter grabs a rock. He throws it at a rock wall near the golem, which causes a rock slide that buries the golem under tons of stones. Dexter gets ready to move on, but suddenly he sees wolves. He runs as they chase him. He ends up trapped in another canyon with the wolves closing in. Using his sword, he skins their fur and then he travels to a snowy land. In the snow, he rides on a polar bear toward an outhouse he noticed far away. On the way, a huge dragon blocks his path and attacks, clawing and breathing fire at him. Dexter jumps and slides down the dragon's back, and near the tail, he stabs it, making the dragon cry and hop away. Dexter reaches the outhouse and enters to claim the throne. Then, the real scene appears. Dexter was actually reading Mondo the Barbarian while leaving the bathroom. He sees he ruined a plant, broke a statue, made Dee Dee cry, shaved the dog, and hurt Dad's back. Mom says she must punish him, but Dexter pulls out his wrench and charges toward her. A. Dexter the Barbarian. Dexter gets on the school bus and spots a girl named Merryweather. Right away, he falls in love with her, but he tests again, but it still fails, and he becomes frustrated. Dexter then goes around town asking people for potatoes. Soon, his lab is filled with potatoes everywhere. He plugs one in, and this time, the whole lab turns on at full power. Computer says the test worked, and Dexter ends his day. The next morning, the house fills with a bad smell, and Dexter sees that all the potatoes rotted. He thinks again and tries a new idea. Outside, the entire planet has turned into potato ground, and Dexter uses it as his power source. Episode 6, B. Tuber Time. In his workshop, Dexter forges a sword and gets ready for a big journey to take over a throne. He steps into a thick, foggy forest, and soon he sees tall, skeleton-like monsters. Dexter twists one of their legs using the bottom of his sword, then slices through the rest of them, turning the monsters into piles of bones. After that, he keeps going. He walks across a wide grassland and then enters a canyon. There, a giant golem appears, standing high above him. Dexter dodges its attacks and tries slicing it many times with his sword, but nothing works. The golem knocks him toward a cliff, and Dexter grabs a rock. He throws it at a rock wall near the golem, which causes a rock slide that buries the golem under tons of stones. Dexter gets ready to move on, but suddenly he sees wolves. He runs as they chase him. He ends up trapped in another canyon with the wolves closing in. Using his sword, he skins their fur and then he travels to a snowy land. In the snow, he rides on a polar bear toward an outhouse he noticed far away. On the way, a huge dragon blocks his path and attacks, clawing and breathing fire at him. Dexter jumps and slides down the dragon's back, and near the tail, he stabs it, making the dragon cry and hop away. Dexter reaches the outhouse and enters to claim the throne. Then, the real scene appears. Dexter was actually reading Mondo the Barbarian while leaving the bathroom. He sees he ruined a plant, broke a statue, made Dee Dee cry, shaved the dog, and hurt Dad's back. Mom says she must punish him, but Dexter pulls out his wrench and charges toward her. Quickly, he rushes back inside to adjust the chip again. On the third test, Computer's voice suddenly becomes commanding and starts giving Dexter orders, irritating him even more. He goes inside once again, but this time, Dee Dee's voice accidentally enters the system, forcing Dexter back inside to fix it. Throughout the day, Computer cycles through different voices, including an announcer-like voice and a Spanish one that Dexter struggles to understand. Eventually, exhausted, Dexter puts on earmuffs and finishes his work. By the next morning, Computer's voice is finally back to normal. Dexter enters the lab, tells her he has laryngitis, and quietly gets back to inventing. Mandark is in his laboratory when he suddenly receives a phone call from Dexter. Dexter tells him that he has finally given up trying to stop Mandark from destroying his lab and has decided to give it to him so he can become more powerful and take over the world. Mandark is shocked and thinks it is a joke, but after checking and detecting no lies, he becomes excited and agrees to come over. On his way there, Mandark keeps thinking Dexter is planning a trick, but when he arrives, everything seems normal. Dexter gives Mandark a full tour of his lab, proudly showing off his inventions. Dexter casually mentions that these things are not that big of a deal to him since he already has similar ones. Mandark does not actually have anything close to Dexter's level, so he nervously lies and pretends that he does. Dexter then hands him a full map of the lab and asks what he wants to see first. Mandark chooses the top secret plans. Dexter leads him to a machine designed to make people smarter. Dexter is about to use the machine on Mandark, but Mandark gets suspicious and assumes it is a trap. He quickly flips the situation, puts Dexter in the machine instead, and activates it. To Mandark's surprise, it is not a trick at all. The machine works. Dexter's brain grows huge, and he becomes even smarter than before. After some time, Mandark finally relaxes and realizes Dexter isn't tricking him at all. Dexter has truly given up on stopping him and is now willing to help him become evil and rule the world. Mandark gets excited and says they can work together to build a machine that will let him take over the entire universe. He already has the perfect plans drawn out, but he never had the tech or materials to actually build it. Dexter confidently says he has everything needed and offers to help. However, the moment they begin, Mandark proves he has no intention of really teaming up. He sits back, lounging and bragging about future evil plans, while Dexter does all the hard work by himself. Dexter works non-stop for hours, welding, wiring, and programming until finally the machine is complete by the end of the day. With dramatic flair, Dexter presents the finished device and hands Mandark the remote. Mandark proudly presses the button, and nothing happens. He presses it again and again, growing more frustrated as the machine refuses to activate. Dexter, keeping a straight face, quietly plugs the machine in. The machine suddenly bursts to life and blasts a giant logo that spells out Dexter's laboratory, just like the show intro. The explosion knocks Mandark back in the exact same way Dexter falls in the opening theme. It turns out Dexter never built a world domination machine at all. He built the intro machine to take his show back. He is ready to fill the rest of the episode with himself, but right then the words, "The End," appears, cutting him off as the episode ends. And that brings us to the end. Whether Dexter is just a boy genius or a kid quietly rebuilding the family he lost, this theory definitely changes the way we see that lab. Childhood chaos or hidden tragedy. Either way, the nostalgia hits different now. If you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to like and subscribe for more cartoon mysteries and fan theories. Thanks for watching, and remember, in Dexter's lab, not every explosion is just for laughs. See you in the next one.